everybody. Sometimes you catch the very tail end of our in-preview conversation. But anyway, I'm Natalie Bencivenga, and all of you know the wonderful Desmond Price of Independent Thought. How are you today, Desmond?
I'm doing good, Natalie. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. You know, guys, we've been coming on here a couple of times a week in the last couple of weeks because there is just so much to talk about. But before we get started, you know, you can follow both of us on this platform and others. But Desmond, if people want to subscribe to Substack here on either of our accounts, where can they go?
Yeah, if you go to the top of the screen right now, you can click on both of our names. They're scrolling across the screen right now. You can subscribe to either of our Substacks. I suggest subscribing to both, particularly Natalie's.
Oh, you're very kind. And as always, we're going to cover a few topics. I'm going to run down what they are right now. But if you have anything that you want to share, please put it in the comments and we will try to get through to them. I will tell you, you guys have been so awesome providing so many comments during these lives that I don't want anybody to feel like we're ignoring you. It's just we're trying to get through stuff in a timely manner as well. So feel free to leave your thoughts. I'm looking off camera because I've got some notes here because there's a lot to get into. And the first thing we're going to be talking about today is Jasmine Crockett says that she'd open a Trump impeachment inquiry if she is brought on as the Oversight Committee chair. That's amazing. And we're going to get into what that could mean. And then Greta Thunberg, if you haven't heard, she's boarded a Gaza aid ship, her and several other people aimed at breaking Israel's blockade. Wow. The level of bravery. I'm really interested in hearing what everybody thinks about that. And then on the flip side, there was a bombing in Colorado recently, and the suspect had planned the attack for a year. It is being considered a hate crime. So we're going to explore what that means. And finally, we're going to end with this really surprised me, Desmond, and I'll be curious what you think of that, that the Supreme Court declined to hear a gun control challenge. There was some conversation around assault rifle bans and whether things should stay in place. And SCOTUS actually said, we're not going to hear that out right now, which I was like, interesting. So there's a lot to discuss, but why don't you kick us off with Jasmine and what's going on?
Right. So, this was kind of like a quick thing that she said in passing. This is during an interview that she did recently where, the reporter asked her if she'd be open to, doing impeachment against Donald Trump when the Democrats retake the House. We're all assuming they're going to retake the House, so I'm saying when, not if.
Sure.
But if the Democrats do retake the House in 2026 and Jasmine Crockett does win the election to be the head of the ranking member of the Oversight Committee, it would kind of fall onto her whether or not impeachment proceedings would take place. She said that she was open to the inquiry. And to that, I just say that it's about time that someone comes out and says it, because the fact of the matter is that plenty of Democrats have been asked this question recently, and they've all kind of kicked the can down the road saying like, oh, well, we'll see when we get there. Oh, well, we consider it, or no one's above the law. They would say a lot of platitudes, a lot of, kind of like dodgy, deflecting language. She flat out said, yes, I would definitely do an impeachment inquiry. And it kind of begs a larger question here, Natalie, is why are people like Jasmine Crockett not just propelled to the front of the line? Why does she even have to fight for this position, honestly?
I wonder.
There's a lot more to say here, and I have plenty of things I want to run into about why I think Trump deserves to be impeached, because it's not just that, hey, I don't like Donald Trump, therefore, he should be impeached. Because, I understand those feelings, but I actually want to get into the legitimate, legal arguments about what he has done that has actually, that I believe deserves impeachment. So get into that in a minute here. But Natalie, what were your thoughts when you saw this come across?
Well, I'm really glad that you want to get into the actual details of this in terms of legalities, because I do think, especially on the right, there is this tendency to say, oh, the Democrats are just being sore losers and, blah, blah, blah. And so I think it's really important that we explicitly explain what he has done that would be considered an impeachable offense. And in this case, there are several. But to your point, when I heard this, I just thought to myself, hell yeah. Like Jasmine once again has stepped up to the plate and is saying the quiet part out loud. And these are exactly the kind of people that we need leading whatever is left of a working people's party that is somewhere lodged in the Democratic Party. And if she and some of the others like her in the party could be propelled to the front, like you said, I think this party could not only move differently and look different, but I think it would actually have a chance at winning elections in the future. And so for me, I once again find it interesting that it took, a Black woman, a woman of color, to have to say these things. And I hope other people rally around her and don't leave her hanging, because she is speaking truth to power. And I really applaud her. I appreciate her. She has been somebody I have been watching and think could really make a mark here. And I do find it interesting that the people that we're looking at to lead this party are younger women of various racial and ethnic backgrounds. Those to me are some of the most vibrant voices right now. And it shows to me that we need a change of guard. We need a change of leadership. And we need to have people at the front of the line who have been suffering the most and the longest in this nation. And so I'm all here for Jasmine, and of course for whatever she wants to bring against Donald Trump, because God knows, I mean, really day one, after he signed a bunch of executive orders and started ripping our Constitution to shreds, I think we could have started an impeachment process literally within 24 to 48 hours of him taking control. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say, though, in terms of some of the specifics.
Well, first, I want to just also reiterate the fact that I'm really much for this. When I see the current direction of the leadership of the Democratic Party, I'm looking at Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. Chuck Schumer is out here talking about sending strongly worded letters to Donald Trump, while also at the exact same time, he's on cable news calling him Taco Trump, because he's actually backing out of, because he's trying to goad him not into doing an Iran nuclear deal, which, I'm sorry, I didn't realize the Democrats were actually for that position the last time I checked. I mean, this is just baffling to me. Also, you have Hakeem Jeffries, who nowhere near as bad as Chuck Schumer. I just want to make that abundantly clear. But at the same time, this is a man who is constantly being asked, what are you going to do? What are your plans? And basically the plan seems to be, to say as little as humanly possible, but we'll see you in the midterms next year. It's not really doing it for me. What I want to see here is similar to the energy that we saw actually after January 6th. Because at that moment, it was abundantly clear that you didn't really need to impeach Donald Trump. He had already lost the election. He was going to leave 10 days later. And you were never going to get the votes in the Senate. It was never going to happen. You were never actually going to convict Donald Trump of a crime in that moment. But they went and impeached him anyway, because it was the right thing to do. Right. It was the right thing to do, even though they knew it was never going to actually, end with the conviction of Donald Trump. Jasmine Crockett coming out and saying that we need to, impeach Donald Trump, maybe it's not the most politically savvy thing to do, but at the same time, it is the morally right thing to do. And let's talk about the reasons why for that. Trump sending people to a slave labor camp in El Salvador, potentially in other countries like Libya, he has been told by the United States Supreme Court that he cannot be doing these things.
That's right.
He's chose to defy them anyway. Accepting gifts, like from the Qatari government, that is a direct violation of the Emoluments Clause. This is actually Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8 for very specific places. You are not allowed to take any gifts or anything from a king or a foreign state without the consent of Congress. He did not have the consent of Congress, went and took it anyway. He has an executive order trying to end birthright citizenship. It has been blocked by the courts on the basis of it being unconstitutional. Executive orders that trying to dismantle the Department of Education, that has also been blocked by the courts because it's been deemed unconstitutional. Suspending asylum, which he has no right to do. He's trying to do it anyway. He's also blocking funding for sanctuary cities. If you defy him, he is going to take federal funding away from you, which is supposed to rely specifically on Congress, where the money goes out to. And that's not even to go into everything that Elon Musk has done. So he created this fake government agency, Doge, and then allowed a person who was not appointed by the Senate to go in and attack pediatric cancer research, Meals on Wheels, raid the U.S. Treasury, shut down offices across the country for the Social Security office. This has been one illegal activity after another illegal activity after another illegal activity. Donald Trump, we already knew he was a criminal. We're not saying anything new here, but the point is that since he's been in office, he has violated the statutes that were before him. He has directly overstepped his constitutional power, and he needs to be put into place for it. I mean, at the end of the day, regardless of what the Supreme Court has said in previous decisions, he doesn't have unlimited power. And so it is up
Mm-hmm.
to the legislative branch to check him when he oversteps his power. And he's overstepped it time after time after time again. And now he wants to go after judges who try to check his power. No, he absolutely needs to be impeached. And I
That's
hope
right.
that the Democrats actually have a spine and do so when they retake power next year.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I think all of that was a really wonderful analysis, if I do say so myself. But I also wanted to add that, the girlies are fighting because Elon Musk, to your point, seems to be maybe siding with you a little bit on this, because he tweeted today that he said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it." I was like,
I want to take a second
what?
here. I want to take a second here because
Yeah,
when I came out over the last week or so, and I was saying that there's been a falling out between Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and people were
yeah.
like, "Oh no, he was supposed to leave the administration, at this time anyway." Like, yes, I know that, but the
Mm-hmm.
circumstances around him actually leaving
Yeah,
have been there's obvious tension going on there. I mean, he
clearly.
criticized his bill, and then the
Mm-hmm.
very next day he
Mm-hmm.
left. And
Right.
I mean, and this was after he got sidelined for more than a month. He was sitting in the Oval Office taking questions like he was the president
I know.
for weeks and weeks and weeks. And all of a sudden, he gets shelved after
Mm-hmm.
the Wisconsin Supreme Court election. So, I mean, there was obvious tension going on
Yeah,
here. And I find it hilarious. I
I do
find it
too.
hilarious. It's pure comedy to me.
It really is. And we knew that this love affair wouldn't last. And, I wonder too, though, to your point, if he's just trying to now distance himself from this administration because perhaps it is a sinking ship, and perhaps Jasmine Crockett saying the quiet part out loud really is a foreshadowing of where this could head. So, once again, it takes a strong woman to take charge here and tell it like it is. And Desmond, I love strong women. I think we both do. And
Yes.
I'd love to segue into our next topic, unless there's anything else that you'd like to add.
Nope. Let's go.
Great. So this has been all over the news, and the AP is one of my go-to outlets around this kind of stuff. But I was really inspired and moved by what is happening here. So climate campaigner Greta Thunberg and other 11 activists set sail on Sunday afternoon for Gaza on a ship aimed at breaking Israel's siege of the devastated territory. The sailing boat, which is operated by activist group Freedom Flotilla Cotillion, departed from the Sicilian port of Catania in southern Italy. It's going to try to reach the shores of the Gaza Strip in an effort to bring some aid and obviously to raise international awareness over this ongoing humanitarian crisis, the activist said at a press conference. And Thunberg said, bursting into tears during her speech, because we are doing this because no matter what odds we are against, we have to keep trying. And I got to tell you, I got goosebumps watching her. I've been a huge fan of her and her work. She's one of the first people that inspired me around climate activism many, many years ago. And I always say, we have to listen to the kids coming up because they're the ones that are witnessing what is happening and having to process it in a different way. And I
Yeah.
don't think ever since that she started connecting dots between the military industrial complex, between genocide, and between the climate crisis, all of the sudden the mainstream media attention on her really went from like 100 to 0, it seemed overnight. And
Right.
so I wanted to bring more attention to this story, not just because of the issue that they are bringing back towards the Palestinian people and the genocide being committed there, and really just the blockade of food and the international war crimes being committed by Israel, but also on the larger scale of recognizing that this is a young person who understands the dots that need connected and how we can't look at one issue without looking at another. And I just really applaud the people here that are really doing something very dangerous, because I think they had bombed one of these boats a few days prior. No one, I don't think, was on it, but they were clearly sending a message. What did you think when you saw this story come out? Because to me, this is really escalating the conversation. Not just, we're not talking about it anymore. Like, people are actually now trying to do something, which is really fascinating.
I fear for their safety.
Me too.
I really do. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I want to just like have this conversation be centered on the bravery and the necessity of what's happening.
Yes.
But Israel has already multiple times over killed American citizens. And they faced no backlash. In fact, the media, which will tell you every single time that anyone does anything in regards to the state of Israel, basically didn't even cover these stories.
Right.
They were almost like footnotes, like, oh yeah, this happened. Here is it on the ticker. But you know, like it is for me. I really hope that they are able to do whatever it is they're going to do safely, because at the end of the day, like it is. I mean, I understand the need to do it. I understand the necessity. I understand like why you want to do it. And honestly, I feel like, you know, if they were going there with maybe like 300 or 3,000 people, like there'd be some more safety in numbers that way. But yeah, and also how disgusting it was to see a member of our Congress, Senator Lindsey Graham, basically put out a tweet that said something to the effect of, "Oh, I hope that, you know, she can swim."
I know.
Basically saying that, you know, like he's almost like egging on the Israeli military into attacking this boat as they're sailing towards Gaza. So, incredibly heroic stuff, though, because at the end of the day, we are all seeing what's happening over there right now. It is being live streamed in front of us. And I think that everyone just keeps asking, like, what else needs to be done? What else needs to be done? And it feels as though we keep trying to like ask our governments to do more. And to some of their credit here, they're doing more than they ever have. But if I'm being fair, more than they ever have is still nowhere near enough.
Yeah.
So that, you know, kind of just, it falls onto the rest of us. And like, what are we supposed to do? We can't just like watch this every day. So I really appreciate the people who have the celebrity that they do, using their celebrity in this way. And there's a lot more that I kind of want to say about this, but I wanted to kick it back to you before that, because I think that there's some extra information about what's happening with the Israeli government and Hamas right now that needs to be put into this discussion. But I'll say that here for a minute.
No, absolutely. And we can go back to that in just a second. I just wanted to elaborate on what you were saying with Lindsey Graham and other prominent people in our government that were going on X, formerly known as Twitter, and other platforms, basically, like you said, egging on the Israeli government to kill Americans or American citizens. To me, that really caught me off guard in the sense that I you know, my breath stopped, because I kind of expect it from, you know, loudmouths on social media that are going to say what they're going to say. But for our government to be condoning violence against its own citizens, for bringing attention to a people in desperate need of humanitarian aid, felt beyond cruel and unnecessary, and just truly an evil that I just couldn't wrap my head around. And it was just another thing that I just thought to myself, my God, I hope people do bring visibility to this, because I, like you said, the safety is in numbers. And even though there's only 11 of them setting sail, us talking about it, multiple people sharing about it, keeping it alive in the media, to me, is an important thing to help bring protection and clarity to what is happening. So once again, I just commend the bravery, but I am very concerned. And, you know, this is often why young people do lead revolutions and revolts, because, you know, you haven't really lived long enough to sometimes think things all the way through like a mother would, or a grandmother would, or a father. You know, it's like, I think we need young people in that way, because they just viscerally feel and react, and it jolts the rest of us to remembering that feeling of reaction and the importance of acknowledging our sense of larger humanity and interconnectedness is that visceral emotional reaction, and bypassing that fear and logic center in the brain is sometimes necessary for change to occur.
No, absolutely. And there does need to be change to occur. In fact, so much so that there have been negotiations taking place for change to occur. I believe the name is Witzok. I believe is the person of the within the Trump administration right now who has been directly communicating with the leadership of Hamas, trying to get a ceasefire deal put into place. Recently, one of the things that Hamas this has all been reported by Drop Site News, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that Hamas had offered was to release all of the hostages again. And that was their like bargaining chip on the table. Please do this, and we will do this. And then they would ask the Israeli military to just like completely vacate Gaza. So just completely withdraw. They will release all the hostages. Israel heard that deal, turned around and said, no, we will not do that. And so afterwards, Hamas actually went back with a counteroffer saying that they would release all of the hostages. And then they would actually also withdraw their own power, saying that they would release power from having, from being the controlling, essentially, government in Palestine or in Gaza particularly, and that they would let an independent commission kind of take their place. And so they gave an offer to the Israeli state of, we'll release all the hostages and we will no longer be in power. And that deal was also turned down. To which that has been essentially what they said that they wanted the entire time. They said they wanted to have all the hostages freed and for Hamas to no longer be in power. Hamas offered that deal and Israel still turned it down. They didn't give any reasoning. There was no reasoning reported as to why they turned that down, but I can't think of a good reason why they would do that other than the genocide is the point. And the ethnic cleansing is the point. And they just want to take this land, and they don't actually care about any of the things that they tell the rest of us that they care about with all of this. So, yes, we do need more people stepping up and trying to get in there, because I don't think that anything that Israel's saying about what their stated goals are actually true whatsoever. I think their goals are the things that we are seeing on live TV, which is just the obliteration of this entire population.
Yeah. And to me, like you said, the cruelty from this government is the point. And when I think, I can't even start to think about it because it'll just make me cry. But I just can't imagine what it must be like to be in that space right now. And I just hope we figure this out, because we can't continue to just see the devastation every day, all day, and not want to do something. And I'm sure that was a driving force here with, to me, this was an act of desperation to get on a boat and go there. Like that's an act of, that's desperation. Like, please, for the love of God, can we stop this? Like, these people need to eat. These children are dying. Like, this is preventable. Like, this is wild. And to your point, this is a land grab, right? This is a land grab. I don't even think they've hidden that, though. That's the thing. It's like, to me, it's like,
everyone will tell you that it's not.
Right. But I mean, they put out on AI that, the images of Trump in a golden statue and Gaza becoming this beachfront property. And like, I mean, this isn't, to me, this isn't a secret. I think that the problem here is they aren't getting the support they thought they were going to get for this atrocity. And so here we are looking at this situation in a way that I don't think the Israeli government expected people to. And so now they're just going to do whatever they want, and that's going to be that. And
they have, they're used to getting a certain level of complicity from the American people that they're not getting this time around. And I think that's been really jarring for them. You see the influence they have over all of our institutions. I mean, it is so prevalent in both parties, not just in parties, but like in our school systems, like in our media. I mean, it is immense just how the framing is done. Like every single time that we talk about this conversation, it is always through the framing of language that they deem appropriate. And by they, I mean like their governments. I don't want to conflate want to conflate like the Jewish people and the Israeli state, because that is a problem that we're going to run into with the next conversation that we're going to have here.
Right.
And I also think it's important to note that Benjamin Netanyahu's government is essentially a more radical version of what the Trump administration is.
Yes.
It is just fact. It feels like the logical conclusion that fascism takes when it comes to, like what a government looks like under like pure fascistic state. Benjamin Netanyahu, what he's done over in Israel is, I mean, I truthfully believe that is the most just the most outright sinister government on the planet right now. I mean, even more so than Vladimir Putin's in Russia. But they're fighting for that top spot. They are definitely fighting for that top spot.
Unfortunately, I think what the connected dots are between both of those regimes is this just total disregard for humanity and for human life. And it all just being because of power and greed. And I think that really is where everything falls apart every single time with any administration. And you can trace that back to what's going on here in the United States as well. To your point, mimicking these despots is, power and greed. And I'd like to segue into the next topic and talk about that conflation because, Desmond, one of the things I've always admired about your work is your ability to hold that two things can be true at once. And I think, independent thought and the work that I do and have done with Facts Over Fear, I try to do the same thing where it's like, the world is not black and white and things aren't binary, right? One thing is not good and one thing is bad and that's it. And there's, no discernible difference between the two in the sense that this stays over here and this stays over here. But we know everything is messy and we know there are many shades of gray as we're talking about issues. And so I thought it was really important that we addressed the conversation around Gaza and also talk about what happened the other night in Colorado. Because to your point, I do think it's the responsibility of media to educate people and make sure that we're not conflating groups and that we're being very clear that when we're talking about criticizing a government and what a government is doing, that is different from talking about an entire ethnic or religious or racial group. And I think it's important to make that distinction as things continue to escalate and as things continue to become more and more violent, not just over in the Middle East, but very much so here in the United States. So I wanted to touch on a story from Reuters, this came out of Boulder, Colorado on June 2nd. An Egyptian national charged with tossing gasoline bombs a pro-Israeli rally in Boulder, Colorado, injuring a dozen people, planned his attack for a year, and he used Molotov cocktails instead of a gun because his non-citizen status blocked him from buying firearms, prosecutors said on Monday. He is being charged with a federal hate crime and attempted murder. The attack has been linked to outrage over Israel's military actions in Gaza. He is 45 and he told investigators he wanted to kill all Zionist people, but had delayed committing the attack until after his daughter had graduated from high school. Police and the FBI quoted the suspect as saying that he took firearms training to obtain a concealed carry permit, but ended up using the Molotov cocktail. He had overstayed a tourist visa and an expired work permit. So there's a lot to unpack here, like on many, many levels. But what I wanted to really get at the heart of this isn't so much the individual or his individual status or anything like that. That's just coming from Reuters, but is more the fact that there is so much tension and so much anger. And we know that anti-Semitism is a real thing. And we know that things don't exist in a vacuum. And we know two things can be true at once. And I just wanted to bring attention that, to me, like, this doesn't help anything. It doesn't help bring safety to the Palestinian people. It doesn't help end the humanitarian crisis. This just creates another crisis, another form of terrorism, and it impacts the people now living in the United States. And it's going to create, I think, even further divisions and further issues within our own communities, when, if anything, right now, we need to be building bridges and having conversations. And Pittsburgh, where I'm based, has one of the largest Jewish populations in the country. And I can tell you with certainty, I know people along the whole spectrum of feelings around what is going on here nationally, what's going on here with anti-Semitism in the United States, and also how they feel about what's going on over there. The Jewish people are not a monolith, and their feelings can span many forms. And so I just wanted to bring attention to the fact that committing this kind of violence here in the United States, or what happened a few years ago at the Tree of Life Synagogue, and the hate crime that was committed when a man walked in with a semi-automatic weapon and killed old people and people praying, and children. Like, this doesn't help anyone. In particular, it certainly doesn't help the people of Gaza. And I feel like I wanted to make that statement very loud and clear, because I do want us to find a way forward here as a community. And I feel like if we're just becoming more and more splintered, and if nothing else, the Trump administration is going to exploit the hell out of what just happened here for their own gain. And that's also what concerns me, is that they're going to say, oh, look, this person was, undocumented, or this person is, Egyptian, or it's just going to create like yet a whole other mess. And it truly upset me on so many levels. So I appreciate the space to discuss this issue as well today.
I mean, the space is always available. I mean, You don't even need to ask for it. I think that one of the problems that people run into, and there's so many different factors of why these problems exist, I want to get into that a little bit too, is that because of the fact that Israel does its absolute best to try to tie basically the entire religion into the state itself, that unfortunately a lot of other people try to do that as well. And this is a huge problem that we see across the board. There are so many notable Jewish people who I see on a consistent basis who use their platforms day in and day out to adequately and accurately condemn the Benjamin Netanyahu administration. They call it a genocide. They're constantly advocating for the Palestinian people. And they feel a sense of obligation to do that as a member of the Jewish community. And I think that too many people are seeing what's happening in Gaza right now and just assuming that, the state of Israel and Jewish people are one and the same, when it's not in and of itself. This person said he was planning this attack for over a year. And he was trying to attack Zionism, which essentially, like, trying to make it seem like he's trying to attack, people who were sympathetic to the state of Israel. But how could he have known what these people were thinking? Like, he just attacked people that he saw that were Jewish, and that is a hate crime. That is just pure and simple. There's just no getting around that. And that is antithetical to what we're trying to achieve here. Because at the end of the day, I think that what we need to be persecuting is actions of a government. We want to be separating Benjamin Netanyahu from the Jewish people, not trying to further tie them together, which is what the goals have been for them all along. They want everyone to feel some sense of connection to the state of Israel through their religion, so that when they do anything as a government, and people criticize it, they can call it anti-Semitism, which is what they've been trying to pass here in America, is by saying, well, if you criticize the state of Israel, you're actually criticizing the Jewish people. That has been their stated goals all along. We don't actually want to further entrench that philosophy, which is what they've wanted all along. No, I cannot condemn this high enough. I cannot condemn this high enough. Violence in any form against civilians is what we are protesting against.
Thank you. Yes.
Violence
period.
against civilians is what we are protesting against. Yes, at the end of the day, everyone is upset right now from what I think most rational people who have a soul are upset right now about what's happening. But the answer to that is never to attack civilians. That is never the answer. There's never the answer. Right. You can't condemn that happening over in Gaza in the West Bank and then carry that out here. That's not the kind of people that we want to be in any way, shape, or form, Natalie.
I couldn't agree more. And I really think for me, it's about having a consistent philosophy. And like you just said, you nailed it. The philosophy is we don't condone attacking civilians, period. Period, in any situation for any reason. And I just think that when we get really off track is when we run into problems, and it creates that further splintering, which is exactly what oppressive governments want. They want you infighting, they want you splintered, and they don't want you paying attention to what they're actually doing, which is stripping away your personal freedoms and causing real harm to people all around you. So yeah, I two things can be true. And I'm just glad we were able to have that conversation today.
Right. And there's something I want to add on to the end of this because I think it's really important to the online discourse that I see around this particular conversation. People try to justify violence by talking
Mm-hmm.
about how, well, a lot of people in Israel actually agree with what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I got to tell you, we are right now in
Yeah.
America being very much threatened by what we deem to be just obscene ideas from the Republican Party, how they want to integrate like the Ten Commandments into schools around the country, about how they want to destroy the Department of Education because they want to start siphoning public dollars into private schools so they can
Yeah.
essentially create their own curriculum. Well, what is the end result of that? The end
Right.
result of that is just be creating a curriculum that basically you get to create propaganda for your students that has no checks whatsoever. And then you can basically just teach them that to love. What do the Republicans always say? We want to teach them to love their country, so on and so forth. You're like forcing patriotism on them, forcing them to just like love the state above anything else. If you
Mm-hmm.
take that to its logical conclusion, this is what I talked about before when I said that Benjamin Netanyahu is actually the further right version of Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
That essentially is what they're trying to get to. They want to
Yes.
create this ultra like nationalistic, place. What has happened in Israel over the years is the direct result of a country taking over and enforcing their will and their ideas onto the populace and making it so that like whatever they think people should believe, people end up just believing as time goes
Yeah.
on. And so over in Israel, they teach these people that
Mm-hmm.
Palestinians are like less than human, that they are
Mm-hmm.
subhuman. I mean, I think that the people over in Israel who are okay with this genocide, I think that is a direct result of years and years and years and years and years of propaganda by the Israeli state.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that we are going to uncouple that by continuing the violence, by continuing this dehumanization. No,
That's
like you,
right.
you have to like pull these things apart and see it for what it is. I mean, at
That's
the end of
right.
the day, I want to see Benjamin Netanyahu and his government. I mean, I think they should be arrested. I think they should be tried
Yes.
as war criminals, but I do never want to conflate what they are doing with the people who live in Israel. I just do not believe that that is a good idea.
I couldn't agree more. And I do think it is a warning to the United States for those exact reasons that propaganda is really, and the disinformation, once again, is a cancer that spreads very quickly. And it always sort of leads to this conclusion of violence through
Yeah,
separations. Yeah. Within
yeah,
populations. And that is not how we are meant to live. We're just not meant to be like that,
yeah,
you know? All right.
yeah.
Well, we have one more topic. And this one's kind of an interesting one. It was one
Yes,
of
it
those ones
is.
where I was like, didn't see that coming. So I'll be curious what people think.
Yeah, so a little bit of information here. The short version that we're going to start with here is the fact that the Supreme Court decided to keep on these gun bans and
Mm-hmm.
restrictions on guns that were in the states of Maryland and Delaware. This was
Mm-hmm.
after Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh decided not to vote with other conservative justices who were willing to take up the case, which left these
Mm-hmm.
laws in power. But give you some more details here. Got this out of Reuters recently, where the Supreme Court, this was just yesterday, refused to hear the Second Amendment challenges to semi-automatic rifles in Maryland, California, and other states as well. These gun right advocates say that AR-15s are owned by millions of Americans, and that they argue the Second Amendment protects these weapons and that they are in common use by law-abiding citizens. It's the same stuff we always hear. I feel
Yep.
like at the end of the day, the NRA just has little pamphlets they just throw at people. And it's like,
Literally.
hey, just say this and get going with it. So 3 conservative justices. We had Justice Clarence Thomas. I mean,
Shocking.
shocker. I wonder how many yacht rides came with this. Samuel
Listen.
Alito and
Mm.
Neil Gorsuch. They voted to hear the Second Amendment challenge.
Neil?
They wanted to take this case. He's all over the place. We don't know
I
what's
know.
going on
I
with
can't
Neil.
figure out what's happening with him these days.
But weird enough, Justice Kavanaugh was the one who decided not to cast a vote in favor of this.
Listen.
He called the lower court ruling. He called the lower court ruling upholding Maryland's ban questionable, but agreed with the majority in turning down the appeal for right now. So he's like, no, we don't want to hear this case right now. He said, in my view, the court should and presumably will address the AR-15 issues soon, maybe in the next term or two. So he's essentially saying, yes, we are going to eventually have this conversation, but we just don't want to have it right now. So we
Kicking
are
it down kick it down the road.
So we're leaving these bans in place. So wanted just to note that California adopted the nation's first assault weapons ban in 1989. Since then, there have been several other states. There's about like 10 of them in effect to have similar bans. If this challenge was heard and they did actually overturn the ruling here, all of these individual states that have assault weapons bans, they would all be null and void.
Yeah.
So that was what was on the table at this time. And it sounds like Kavanaugh is essentially saying that they're going to have this conversation one way or another. So who knows what that will look like at that moment, Natalie? But as of right now, these assault weapons bans in these several blue states do stay in place. What was your reaction when you heard this story?
Well, I always find it funny, like when state rights matter, when states' rights don't matter. And, so we're going to have these sort of federal conversations when it supports, the NRA, so to speak, or we're going to do things like, oh, no, women can't cross state lines to get an abortion. Suddenly the federal government's enforcing that one. So it's always interesting to me that the party of small government, it's not so true anymore, right? And I thought this was also interesting. I was reading this today and it said the majority first concluded that assault weapons are not protected by the Second Amendment's right to bear arms at all because in essence they are military-style weapons designed for sustained combat operations that are ill-suited and disproportionate to the need for self-defense. And I thought that was also just an interesting point to bring into the mix because at one point there was a nationwide assault rifle ban, and then George W. Bush let it lapse, and now we've had chaos ensue ever since. And, you and I are of a generation that we started as we were in high school, middle school, growing up, seeing, Columbine and the different shootings in our own neighborhoods, in our own schools. And we've grown up, with our friends who have had issues with gun violence in their homes. So this is not something that I think is so far away from us as people where we can look at something like this and say, yeah, why the hell does anyone need an assault rifle? If you go to an army base, you can't just use your guns whenever you want them. You have to check them out. They're under lock and key. It's a very regulated process because it's respected. These are weapons of war. And we know what kind of deadly force can be done with something like this, especially when we're aiming them at children and civilians. And so for me, I think what shocked me the most is how unpredictable this Trump-appointed court really has been. Because I can't tell from day to day what the hell they're going to do. And nope. I do think Kavanaugh is definitely like a pick-me girl, where he really wants to be liked. And I could feel that from way back when he was being confirmed. He just has this for anybody that's watching Bravo, he's got this Sheena Shea energy about him. It's pick me. I know this is going over your head, but it's very he wants to be in the cool kid crowd. And this is what I've always picked up from him. And so for me, this means, what does he think? How are things going to be talked about on Reddit? And how is he going to be perceived? I truly feel this energy from him. So I wasn't sure if maybe he thought, I don't want to be on the wrong side of this. Or what, but I'm never sure which way he is going to blow. And I just think that is really fascinating because it shows you at the end of the day that even when certain people are pretty much cherry picked for certain roles because they think they're going to toe the line, that's not always the case. And also, I think sometimes people behave reactionary because they don't want to be seen as Trump's toady or somebody's, boy, so to speak, in that way. So I think there could be some ego playing in, oh, you think you know what I'm going to do? You think you have an idea? Maybe you don't. And so I don't know. It's very interesting watching this terrible court play out day after day, because I'm always sitting there with popcorn going, what's happening? I just wish it wasn't so detrimental, everything that they're doing. But it is wild. It is wild.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't make heads or tails of the Supreme Court and the decisions that they choose to make, the decisions they choose not to make. I mean, I have seen them buck Donald Trump more than I assumed that they would.
Same.
And then, there's times where you're like, oh, well, maybe they're rational. Maybe they actually do have some semblance of sanity. And then, the Dobbs decision falls. And so like you don't know what to expect from the Supreme Court.
No, you don't.
Let me just transition to
Sure.
the actual debate itself, because
Yes.
Kavanaugh is not saying that we're not going to hear this case. He's saying we're not going to hear this case today. So we're going to hear this case.
Right. But not today.
Which
I'm telling you, I just think it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, for whatever his reasoning is,
right.
You know, like he's acknowledging that we're going to have this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to get out in front of it for a second. Just have this conversation. You know, like we've all had this conversation. We're going to have it again and again and again. And you know what? I used to get really annoyed by these moments where it's like, hey, we've had this conversation before. We don't need to have it again. But you know what? Unfortunately, we are living in a time now where everything's being relitigated. Yes. We thought child labor laws were a thing of the past. No, that's back in vogue now. We thought that, women had rights to their bodies, but that's over now. We thought that, public schools were just agreed upon as good things. Now we want to get rid of those too. So, I mean, unfortunately, the one thing the Republicans have proven to us over time is that rights are actually things that you have to consistently fight on the behalf of, because they are never satisfied with trying to, leave these things in place. They want to constantly roll things back.
Yeah.
When the assault weapons ban went into place in 1994, it stayed in place for 10 years. As you mentioned, George W. Bush let it lapse. During the time that it was in effect, there was a 43% drop for gun-related deaths in the United States of America.
That's huge.
Now, people will say, like, well, hey, you didn't eliminate gun violence, so why even do this in the first place? I got to tell you, 43% is a huge number, is an absolutely colossal number. And I'm of the belief that, yes, you know what? You just get it out there in the open. There are no gun laws that you're going to put into place that are going to eliminate gun violence in the United States of America. It's just not going to happen. Right. While there are guns in America, there'll be gun violence in America. But if I can take the number of people dying every year down from like 1,000 to 600, I think the 400 people who survived who otherwise wouldn't have is worth the regulation.
Oof.
I don't know.
Such a controversial statement.
I don't know how you argue against that unless I don't even want to get into some of the minds of these people.
Well, I mean, like I can't remember what her name is, but she was a Republican when confronted about the Medicaid cuts, and she said, "Well,
Joni Ernst.
Thank you." And she said, "We're all going to die anyway." I mean, this is the nihilistic moral apathy that we absolutely do not need in our government. And it trickles into all these different things, very much including gun violence, where people are like, well, what's it matter? Some people are still going to die. And to your point, it's not just saving those lives. It's the ripple effect that now their children aren't devastated by losing one or both parents. Now their family members aren't devastated by losing a sibling or a cousin or a mother or a father. It is a community thing. A community leader isn't gone. That can't really be replaced by the energy and the love and the passion and the commitment that they gave to their communities. So for me, we can't just quantify the value of human life. We actually have to care about human life. And Ron Elliott makes a good point. She's a Christian nationalist looking forward to the apocalypse. We cannot allow this white fundamentalism, this Christian fundamentalism, to continue to usurp and concentrate power, right, out of the hands of the people. And they can have that feeling, that philosophy. I think it must be a very sad and depressing way to exist, but they shouldn't be allowed to legislate that philosophy, in my opinion. And to me also, I also look at government as the government should be protecting human rights and expanding human rights. Once you have a human right put into place, it should not be suddenly up on for grabs just because you have a new government or a new president or whomever in power. This to me is a non-negotiable. So when we're looking at human life in general, once again, of course, people like her are going to say, well, what's it matter? We all die anyway. Of course, people are going to say that when they don't believe the climate crisis is happening, when they don't believe that healthcare is a human right, when they don't believe that COVID is killing hundreds of Americans a week. We've desensitized the hell out of this whole situation when they don't care when they're watching genocide live streamed? Why would we then assume that they would suddenly care about gun safety? So to me, it's a philosophical marker that you need to be removed from power, and we need to put in your place compassionate, logical, reason-based thinkers that want to do more for the common man, woman, person, and not just for somebody's bottom line or their pocketbook. Because I am really sick and tired of this idea of running our government like a business. And we've now seen Trump and Elon Musk run that business into the ground anyway within the last 6 months. So that didn't work. So why don't we have some philosopher kings and queens and people take hold and look at it from a humanistic lens of how do we improve the lives of the people who are here and not the potential life that is so easy to look at through rose-colored glasses.
Got to be careful with those philosopher kings. I mean, one of them was named Alexander. He tried to conquer the world. A lot of cities are still named after him. Got to be careful with these people.
I love that's your comment. I'm just saying we need to try a different approach. Okay, all right.
You said philosopher king. My mind went straight to Alexander.
I love you.
I gotta be careful
my
with
God.
those
All right, maybe just queens then. I'm all here for that. Bring on the matriarchy. Go on.
I think that it's really important to be vigilant in these times when we're having these conversations, because I think, unfortunately, we have a incredibly polarized and loud ideological minority in this country who sometimes makes you believe that they're the majority when they're really not.
Right.
You have a House of Representatives that is heavily, the product of God, I'm forgetting the name here, Natalie, for a second here. Gerrymandering, right? So a lot of members in the House have their districts because of gerrymandering, where they went state by state and made sure that they chose the districts with the people that they wanted to have. You have a lot of people in the Senate who they only exist because we pick our Senate based on having 2 from every state, which means that states like Wyoming get 2 senators and states like California get, 2 senators, and which makes total sense. We have a president who's picked about the Electoral College, right? So another system that's once again kind of like rigged against majority rule. We have a government that is just saturated with a minority ideology that really shouldn't be in the position of power that it's in the first place. So, and also, that's not even getting to the fact that the right wing also is the political movement that spends billions of dollars on their propaganda networks every year. Not just in the mainstream with places like Fox News, but also in the new media sphere. They spend so much money on places like the Daily Wire, like Tim Pool, like Candace Owens gets a lot of money. So many of these people are just sucking up so much billionaire cash right now. So we are flooded in every way, shape, and form with a conservative ideology. And it kind of, I think sometimes it drowns out everything else, and it makes you believe that they actually do have a majority right now, when really they just found an effective way to be a minority ideology and still essentially control the conversation and the narratives everywhere.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I think that it's important that as that is happening, that we recognize that, the majority of people in the country actually do agree with us, and we can't be drowned out by their voices. Because I think sometimes it's easy to give in, especially in these moments where it feels like every day we're waking up to a new terrible headline from the Trump administration. I mean, we talked about this before, Natalie. They want to essentially make you submit through just this just constant bombardment with just terrible news day after day after day after day. And it almost just pushes you into a place of despair where you don't even want to have these conversations anymore. Right. But it's so important that we continue to do so. And I'm glad that we had some more conversations here today, Natalie.
Me as well, Desmond. I appreciate you. And I appreciate everybody that joined us today. I do think it's important that we recognize the power of media, and that we recognize that even with the billions and billions of dollars being spent on propaganda, it's not working, because there's so many of us that still believe in each other, and building that community is really vital to our survival as a thinking, growing experience, a collective experience together. So I appreciate you. And thank you so much for doing this with me. I love our conversations.
Yeah, and we will be back on Friday. For our next live stream. So if you don't want to miss that, please go ahead and click at the top of the screen right now. Make sure that you are subscribed. You can watch the playback on Substack, YouTube, Spotify. If you're not subscribed already in those places, make sure you do so now. Links for Natalie's stuff will be in the episode description. So you can go ahead and click on that and you will see all of Natalie's links. Go follow her on Instagram if you're one of those Instagram people.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
if you're one of those people.
If you want, some people swore off Instagram. Some people said they went back to Instagram. You know,
I mean, listen,
it's a whole thing. But Natalie's trying to get to 7,000 followers on Instagram. So
help me get there, guys.
One at a time. One at a time.
One at a time. No, I appreciate everybody. Thanks so much, Desmond.
Yeah. Any final notes?
No, I mean, let's just, keep talking about the things that matter, and please share this if you believe in the things that matter as well.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. We will see you on Friday.
Bye, everybody.